The Detroit Lions are officially coming off their bye week, and that means that they can finally start making that push to be able to lock up the division and hopefully secure a playoff spot in the second half of the year. But in order for that to happen, there are a couple players on this roster that I believe need to take their play to another level. We're going to talk about that and a lot more in this video, starting right now. What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Miko, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about a couple Lions players that I believe need to have stronger second halves of the season compared to what they did in the first half. Now, when I say that, I'm not necessarily saying that these players were terrible or that they sucked in the first half of the season, but for some of these cases, they may have not necessarily had the performances that many of us had expected, or potentially did have really strong performances, but not necessarily to a level that is going to be sustainable for the next 9 games that the Lions are going to have on their schedule. So, once again, like always, these are just my personal preferences. I would love to hear from you guys in the comment section below of a couple players that you believe need to step up their game as the Lions continue to make this push to lock up the division and lock up a playoff spot. But feel free to disagree with me. Always willing to do that and have conversation with you guys in the comments. So without further ado, let's get to the first player that I believe needs to take a step up in their game in the second half of the NFL season. So we're just going to get this player out the way from the start because, listen, there's no denying it. There's no ducking it. There's no avoiding it. If there's one player that does need to have a stronger second half of the season than they did the first half, that player has to be Jameson Williams. And listen, JMO obviously had to deal with the suspension, and that definitely hampered his ability to get up to speed with this Lions offense in some capacity. He also had to deal with an injury in training camp, which also hampered, his learning curve. But it's no shocker to say that, listen, through the first few games that JMO has been available, he's had a bit of a disappointing performance. So far, he's been targeted 15 times. He's only had 6 receptions and 3 drops on the year. On top of that, he's only had 71 receiving yards on the year, and he only has 1 touchdown. That is not what a lot of us are expecting out of a player who, again, we were expecting to kind of hit the ground running in his second year now that he's fully healthy, and we were expecting him to be a bigger focal point of this offense, and that is just not yet materialized. Some of that is Jameson Williams' fault. The fact that, again, the drops, having 3 of those on the year already, some of it is just a misunderstanding of where he's supposed to be on the field, running the wrong routes in some situations. And then some of it is on just, I think, how the offense is utilizing him and probably making him a little too one-dimensional and just sending him on a bunch of deep routes. No matter what the situation is, JMO can only control what he can control, which is his play on the field. And that unarguably needs to be better. He needs to be better in his route running. He needs to obviously catch the ball. And the offense needs to continue to find ways of utilizing him in the passing game outside of just sending him on 20-yard bombs. I believe if those things can be cleaned up, JMO can become a very reliable weapon for this offense and someone that Jared Goff can start to build that level of trust and chemistry with so that they can have another dangerous element to this offense to go along with the play of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, David Montgomery when he's healthy, and Jahmyr Gibbs when he's being utilized to his fullest capabilities as well. And you guys should know this about me. When it comes to JMO, I am not by any means putting any additional pressure or any type of pitch count on him. He has as much time as he needs to be able to get acclimated to this game, but we can't deny the fact that he does need to have a stronger second half to the season compared to what he did the first 8 weeks of the Lions season. Now, the next group of players, yes, I did say players that is on my list that need to actually have a stronger performance in the second half of the season, is basically any of the defensive ends that play opposite Aiden Hutchinson. And listen, there's a reason why going into the trade deadline, there were a lot of fans clamoring for the Lions to trade for another edge, because the lackluster performance that we were getting from the likes of Charles Harris, John Kaminsky, Josh Paschal, and even Romeo Okwara was just not quite getting it done. Now, Julian Okwara has recently gotten reintroduced into the roster after coming off of IR, and in 3 games, he's already been able to pick up 2 sacks, which is very encouraging. But currently, Aiden is sitting on top of the Lions roster with 4.5 sacks, while the rest of their defensive end have combined for 5 total sacks. That's just not going to cut it for a guy and for a defense that needs the flexibility to be able to occasionally just be able to get pressure with just their front four. Now, ideally, the more preferred option would have been that the Lions went out and got an elite pass rusher at the trade deadline, but that's not something they decided to do, and I can kind of understand why. This is a team that has, for the most part, been able to generate pressure and be able to cause problems for the opposing quarterbacks by using a committee of pass rushers. Yes, Aiden is going to be the number one guy that they're going to rely on to be able to generate pressure, but they're still going to expect guys like Charles Harris, like Julian and Romeo Okwara, and like Josh Pascal to be able to get pressure on the opposing quarterback. And there's also been parts of this where some of those guys haven't been healthy. Julian Okwara, like I said, is just now coming back from IR. Josh Pascal was also missing some time due to injury. Those guys are still kind of getting acclimated back to being able to play football full time. And hopefully over the next couple weeks, they can start becoming more effective in their pass rush ability. You also have some interior pass rush that's becoming more of a factor in the likes of Aleem McNeil, who has 4 sacks on the year himself. So those types of things should be able to alleviate some pressure off of Aiden and also give more opportunities to some of the edges on the opposing side. But again, there's no denying that those additional edge rushers, the likes of, like I said, Romeo, Julian, Charles Harris, especially because he was giving a starting spot at the start of this year, and even a guy like John Kaminsky do need to just find more opportunities to be relied upon or be able to win their one-on-one matchups, especially when Aiden's out here getting double teamed left and right. If those players can find a more consistent style of play and be able to be, again, more disruptive in the pass game, that can therefore give us a little bit more confidence for this Lions team going forward in the rest of the season. And there's a lot more favorable matchups for that to be going forward. Obviously, they have to deal with the Chargers this week. But after that, there's a lot more games where this defense should be able to be more aggressive and be, more of a problem for opposing quarterbacks going forward. Now, the third person on my list is middle linebacker Jack Campbell. And before people start going crazy in the comments, listen, I understand that this is Jack's rookie season, and there are bound to be a certain number of mistakes that he's going to make along the way. And so I don't want to make this seem out to be like, hey, if he doesn't pick it up in the second half of the season, that he'll never get it right. I think we've seen that from Alex Anzalone, who probably didn't have his best year, his first year in Detroit, but has consistently gotten better and is probably playing the best football of his career currently this season. We've seen that with Derek Barnes, who has now elevated himself up to a point where he's a consistent, starter, or at least getting a starter level number of snaps with this Lions defense. So the same thing could be very well said of Jack. But with that said, I do think he has room to improve this second half of the season with the Lions and start to have a more consistent level of play. Where Jack has probably been the best so far during his first 8 games of the NFL is mostly been in run defense. He's been a solid tackler, and he's been a solid force in the run game. However, he still is making certain mistakes or not just really figuring everything out when it comes to pass coverage, and those types of things are really starting to hinder his game. If he's able to improve when it comes down to pass coverage, being able to have better recognition in zone coverage, being able to be more relied upon in man coverage, I do think he can start to become a more of a force for this Lions defense. Also, he needs to improve his pass rush, and I don't expect that to necessarily get better in this year. Jack's probably going to need an offseason. He's going to need an offseason program where he's going to have to work on his pass rushing to get better. But even still, just being someone that can be utilized a couple snaps here and there could be something that could really help elevate his game and help him find more confidence so that he can play at a high level. By no stretch am I saying that Jack is going to continue to struggle. I think he's honestly, for the most part, played pretty well. He hasn't disappointed me by any stretch. And I do understand that there's a certain grain of salt that you need to take with PFF grades. But when you start to look at him, you can kind of start to see a pattern of, he's not always playing the best football in these various situations. And if his snap count is going to continue to rise, he's just got to find other ways of showing up and playing consistently against the likes of, or alongside the likes of, an Alex Anzalone and a Derek Barnes on this Lions defense. Now, the last person on my list is going to hands down be the most controversial, and I'm sure I'm going to have to argue with a good amount of people in the comment section about this, and that's fine. But please remember, at the start of this video, I said some of the people on this list isn't because they've had bad seasons, it's just their season so far hasn't matched up to what I thought they would do, and I do think that they need to step it up in the second half of the season to be able to help the Lions be able to accomplish their goals. And that is very much the true when I bring up the likes of Aiden Hutchinson. Now, listen, Hutch is already leading this team in sacks. He's leading this team in pressures. And there's an argument to be made that he's doing everything he possibly can from his standpoint to make this defense be as good as it's been so far. However, with that said, I do think there is room for him to do more. With 9 games left in the season, Hutch can absolutely be more of a force when it comes down to turning a lot of those pressures that he's generating into some actual sack numbers. Currently, he's only sitting at 4.5 sacks. He's had 3 games. The last 3 games he's played, he has not registered a sack. His last game that they played, he only registered a tackle. I am by no means saying that he's regressing, and I'm not by any means saying that he's playing terribly, but I do think there's another level that we are expecting him to get to. Last year, when this was his rookie year, we kind of expected this. We expected Hutch to eventually get to a point where he was going to hit a rookie wall and sack production was going to kind of slow a bit. At this point, going into his sophomore year, I still think there are definitely things that he's learning. There are things that he can improve on, but at the same time, there still has to be a level of expectation for him to be a little bit better. Dan Campbell talks about it at times whenever they don't get the ideal, performance out of their defense. He doesn't single out Hutch specifically, but if you start to read between the lines, he talks about his star players playing like star players, for the guys that he's expecting to win their one-on-ones to win their one-on-ones. And even that is a little tough when it comes to Hutch because he's not always getting one-on-ones. He is getting double teamed. But unfortunately, I can't give him too much of a break for that because that is what comes along with being your team's best pass rusher. When you start looking around the NFL, some of the best pass rushers on teams are going to face double teams. Very rarely are they getting one-on-one situations. Myles Garrett is getting double teamed. Max Crosby getting double teamed. Either of the Bosas, same thing, right? It doesn't matter what team they're on. If they're considered the team's best pass rusher, they are more than likely getting their fair share of numbers of double teams as well. And at this point, Hutch is going to have to find ways of being able to counter that. Now, this does go back to the second point that I made in this video. Some of that can be helped by his other counterparts taking a bigger load of this, pass rushing scheme and helping to alleviate some pressure off of him so that it's not so easy to just double team him or so easy to chip him. But on the other hand, if that never happens, Hutch is still going to have to find ways of being successful in the pass rush game. And with 9 games left in the season, I do think he's still going to find ways of getting to that 10 sack total. Going into the year, I thought Hutch would be in the mix for Defensive Rookie of the Year. I thought he would be in the mix for a Pro Bowl. And in order for that to happen, his second half of the year is going to have to be a little bit stronger. Listen, the pressures are great. The PFF grade are great. And I think he's playing well. But I do think there is another level that we need to see him get to in order for this defense to really continue to hum along and even reach another level or another gear that they have yet to see so far through the first 8 games of the Lions season. So that's going to do it for my list of players that I think need to just, again, take their game up another level. And like I said, this is not me saying that these players are terrible or that they're going to continue to be terrible. Some of them have played well. Some of them, they have legitimate reasons for why things have been slow. And some of them, like in the case of Hutch, has played well, but just I think he has another gear that he can reach. With that said, I want to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comment section below who is a player or a couple players that you believe need to take their game up another level so that this team can continue on their winning ways. They went into the bye at 6-2. What are they going to end the season at? It would be awesome to see them finish it with 10 plus games, but in order for that to happen, some players need to step up. And like I said, I want to hear from you guys who you think those players might need to be. Also, if you're looking for any more coverage from the Lions, you can always head over to pridedetroit.com. You can always find some of the latest articles we posted over there. Also, if you're new to this channel, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and that way you can be notified of any new videos, anytime we go live, or anything like that that is going on over here at the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. So with all that said, I'm Miko. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.